All right, so let's get started. As an introduction, my name is Rachel, and I'm an Audit Transformation Manager here at DataSnipper. With me on the webinar today is my colleague, Justin. Justin, would you like to say hi?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Justin will be moderating the chat today, so if you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A function, and he will be monitoring that, and we can discuss any of those that come up today during the session. We're going to start off with a quick little agenda. As I mentioned, I've learned a lot about EBPs over the last couple of months. I attended the AICPA conference in Denver earlier this month, and I had a lot of really good conversations with EBP auditors. And so we want to just take a little moment to get to know the audience, to make sure that we are answering questions that you guys actually want answers to. After that, we'll spend the bulk of the session going through the use cases that we created. If you want to access those training materials, you can click along with me today, or you could sit back and relax and enjoy the show. We'll have some time for Q&A, and we will wrap up discussing next steps. So with that, let's get started. All right, so as I said, we want to get to know you. So I'm going to launch a quick poll, and I would like to hear how many employee benefit plan audits do you work on annually? You personally, how many are you a part of in your firm on average? We just want to know how the volume of audits you guys are doing out there across our customers and prospects. We'd like to hear from you there. And it looks like we have a couple of different buckets. So 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, or 16 or more. And you should see a drop down in that poll. All right, looking like we got a lot of participation. I love to see it. And it looks like we have about 33% that do 0 to 5. And then we have about 30% that do 16 or more. So hopefully what you learn here today is applicable to all of those EBP audits that you are involved in, and you have some good takeaways from today's session for that. So another question we'd like to know, and this is going to be another poll for you guys, is let us know what some of the common pain points are that you're experiencing in your audits. And maybe a related question is, where do you see the opportunity for automation? So any of the repetitive manual tasks that you're typing in, or the document organization, where do you see some of those? Where do you see some potential for automation? Doesn't necessarily have to be with DataSnipper, but that's what I can help you with that one today. Justin, do you have any thoughts maybe around some common pain points as we see some of these answers coming in?
Yeah, 100%. So I suppose my experience, my frustration always was around the type of data we receive from clients, and like the mismatch between all the different data types, trying to trace that from my sample all the way through to the ultimate evidence, and the different qualities of data that came through, and the different unique identifiers that help me trace all those pieces of information through. I always struggle with that, and that was one of the challenges that I had through my learning interactions with, I suppose, large data sums.
Yeah, I think that's common. I mean, particular EBP audits of what we're talking to today. I think we have a good example that will show the group that. But I think it's also just an audit issue, that auditors face between all the documentation we get from our clients and organizing that, and getting it from A to Z into the audit file.
100%.
Great. Well, thank you guys for all these answers. It looks like we're getting some good ones in. Feel free to keep typing out some of those short answers for us today. And as I mentioned, we are here today to really help provide you guys an answer specific to EBPs. So, I'm aware that these are types of engagements where there's cost pressures and there's a challenge to balance the profit and the cost. for these audits. So our goal today is to show you how DataSnipper can alleviate that cost pressure by automating procedures you're already doing and helping them to be repeatable across your engagement. With that, it'll take us into our live demo. If you do have those training materials downloaded and you'd like to click along with me, do make sure that you extract them from the zip file and you will be able to follow along. You can see here that these will be the folders that you will uncover from that zip. We have a plan overview that we're going to go into to showcase some of our manual snipping tools and how you can possibly use this in more of an admin side or in your planning procedures. And then the second one is going to be contribution testing. So a little bit towards what Justin was inferring about of tracing and finding that unique identifier and how you can expedite or automate your testing. I think the contribution testing materials we have will help answer that. So again, if you're following along, great. If not, sit back and relax. If you are clicking, let's go into the this Excel file. It is called the DS 401k plan overview. And I'll pause one moment just to make sure everyone is caught up with us today. And I do see one more question in the chat. If you don't see the link for those training materials, or if you don't have it, go ahead and look in the Q&A, not in the chat function. You should see it in there. And there's a link that you can download those onto your machine. All right, so maybe just to give everyone some context, the idea of this use case came from one of my conversations I had at the EBP conference in Denver. That is not just specific to EBPs, but I do think we have a good use case for it. The idea is that we have some sort of perm file. What I learned through these conversations is that there's a lot of different documents that are being leveraged in an employee benefit plan because you have a lot of different players in this game. And so what we've done is we've created a small short summary that you can customize however you'd like. But really the idea here is that you have one, a perm file, some sort of centralized location for all the related documents in an employee benefit plan. So I think whether you have turnover on the team or you're onboarding someone new, it's nice to kind of give them a playbook of what are the rules related to this benefit plan. So as you can see here, that's kind of what we're creating here. If you could see, we already have some snips embedded in the workbook. And so if you click into any of these shaded cells, and if we open up that viewer, you'll see the document viewer populate. And as I click around, DataSnipper is going to show me where those extractions have been placed across the document. So the idea here is that we've received our plan document and we know the effective date right off the bat, and that plan document can live within this file. What we can also do, and the blue shades here was leveraging our text snip tool. And if you have taken a DataSnipper course before, or if you haven't, this is really the benefit and really the coolest part of DataSnipper is this cross-referencing and this ability to extract information directly from the document. So you could see that this is going to be our plan document that lays out all of the information and really creates some consistency and some continuity year over year. So we can look at and see that we have that. We can see that from the documents we have imported, we have the board minutes that actually sets the plan in play by the company. And then we also have an adoption agreement. You can see that here, that we've actually snipped through this adoption agreement, noting the plan effective date and the different provisions and those elections made below. As you're clicking through, you could see very quickly whether I'm a newcomer to the team or maybe just refreshing, looking at compliance or new regulations, or I just need a refresher on the plan. It all lives in one place. We've imported these documents into our workbook, and we are able to interact with them using that cross-referencing and extraction. If you go into the Organize button, you can see that this is where you'll be able to note which files have been imported. So the ones that we were just looking through that have been snipped will live here. And if you're new to DataSnipper, you might be familiar with the folder structure. This is something that came out in version 5, which is pretty recent. And so I just wanted to be able to show that you've imported all of these documents, and this is a very simple example. But you might want to look at all of the board minutes, for example. So I suggest making folders and just dragging and dropping these documents right into there. This will really come in handy when we go through our next use case with some of our automated features. But as a best practice, every DataSnipper I would definitely suggest using that folder structure just to keep things organized as you're leveraging the platform. The other thing to note here is that you'll be able to see where the OCR has been applied. And this is really the secret sauce to DataSnipper, in that we use optical character recognition to extract from these documents. So this is always a good place to see that information, or if OCR has been ran. If you are having issue with any of the extractions you're being placed, this is where I would direct you first to see if OCR has been ran there. So now we've looked through the document, and like I said, in this scenario, I'm imagining you're in planning, and we are asking the client if maybe there is a new adoption agreement that we need to take into play for our audit procedures that we will embark on. So what we can do here is that the way we've set up this work paper additionally is that we're going to import a new document. We've received that adoption agreement, and now we want to update our plan summary or this overview for the perm file. So what we're going to do is you can either go into organize, or we can just import documents. So if you're following along with me, click onto the drop down here and click into documents. This will bring a window up, which is exactly where you've saved this Excel file. And if you go into the supporting documents folder, you'll see that there is a 2022 adoption agreement. There has been an update. If you open that, DataSnipper will, upon import, will run OCR over it as it's importing. But again, we can go to that organize button to make sure that that's happened. This is also where I would suggest to throw this into a folder. So I have all of my adoption agreements in one spot. If we go through and close that, now what we can do is read through the restatement and compare it to the provisions we had from the original adoption agreement. So what I would do is, if you click on the little button here, we're able to add that restatement sheet. And so I'm going to scroll down and see that this is not a new plan with an effective date, but this is an amendment. Using that snip tool and having my cell or my cursor in E7 on the Excel side, I'm going to drag and drop a snip into my Excel document. You can see upon lifting my mouse that amount has been extracted even with the little checkbox that I can now see there is another amendment. I do see in the chat that if you don't have OCR ran, if this does say contains text, you can go ahead and select the document and click OCR, and you will be able to read that, or you still perform the extractions. So as we're going along, what we can do here is any of these cells that have been shaded and that are linked to that original agreement, that is not where we want to click. We want to click into this number. So this identifier that we're expecting, or something we want to search on. What we can do is, using the search and snip function up here, we can look to see where this provision number lies in the documents we've imported. So because we're looking at changes from 2019 to 2022, I can see here that where that amount has been searched. And you can actually snip from there if you'd like, if I wanted to snip that 2.1.1. But essentially, that's just the way that I can get to like a quick Control F within the document to find where those new changes might be. So if we click in here, we can see that for eligibility, it doesn't appear that anything changed. So maybe you'd like to use the validation snip, and putting your cursor in row G, we're going to document that no changes have been made. Upon releasing, you'll see that that leaves a V mark, and that is a default of our validation snip, but you are able to change this. So by typing into here, I might want to say no changes. Let's just say no changes. So me as the auditor, I now know, or me as the reviewer or someone new to the team knows that there have been no changes and maybe no implications to our testing down the line. If you scroll down, you can see that for the age and service requirement, we do have changes. But maybe what I'd like to do is a text snip to show that this amount has been updated from no minimum requirement documented to now 21 years. We could also do another text snip here to show that that amount has changed. But with a right click, you'll be able to actually change that to a validation snip, keeping that amount extracted in that cell. Or you can change it to a exception snip, which is going to be denoted in the red shading. As we keep going down, we can see that this election hasn't changed, but there was a little change to the year. So maybe that's something you'd want to pull out into a text snip tool, a validation tool, or that exception tool here. Whoops. This is a good point to show that DataSnipper's each extraction you do is going to default to the next right available cell. So if that happens, and move your cell move the cursor to the correct cell there. You can see that that really didn't take much time at all, and it is a pretty powerful feature that we have as part of DataSnipper. But if you do have, there is a quicker way we can automate this. So I know not everyone might not be able to click along with me today, but if your license does have access to the financial statement suite, you might be familiar with what we call version compare. That's an add-on module. If you don't have that on your license, you might not be able to click along, like I mentioned. But what I'm going to do is click into this, and this is really a way that you can track changes or identify changes within your document. What you can do is we're going to import the old version of the adoption agreement, so 2019. If you click that, and we're going to select the 2022 adoption agreement for our new version. I also want to note here that you are able to import documents directly using the import buttons here, but because we've already imported these into the workbook, we can now direct them towards version compare. But if you hadn't imported them into your workbook, you could do that via that button here. Now what we're going to ask DataSnipper to do is perform a comparison. And that happened in a millisecond, I think. And it's a really visual tool that helps you see where these changes are. So my understanding of adoption agreements is it's a little bit of a check the box of what applies and what doesn't. So version compare, you could see that we can validate the company name didn't change, that tax identification number is the same. I think the idea is to draw you to those changes. So you can manually go through and search the document, or you can see here, we are able to quickly visually see what those changes are as we scroll all the way down. And further, we can export that into a sheet. So what I can do is export that into Excel, and you'll have a new tab populate in your workbook, but you're still able to use that cross-referencing between the two versions. You can see in my 2019 version, this amount was not found in the new version, so there's going to be a blank there. But any place where those locationally are the same, we could see the change here by quickly just toggling with the keys between these two columns. I think this is a really great feature to use when you are, you could do it on sort of planning documents. Financial statements is a really great use case for these, especially when you have a little bit of version chaos, I'll say. But here at DataSnipper, I find this tool to be really useful for our auditors out in the field. So with that, that's the conclusion of this first use case. Whether or not you have version compare, you could see that you're still able to leverage DataSnipper with these basic snipping tools that we have, or the manual tools here. And you can really still use that perm file, use the central location to save that time and effort in your planning procedures. With that, I'm going to send out a quick poll. Oh, I need to end the last one. And we're going to hop back into our slide real quick. I want to know how much time you think something like this could save your teams. I'm going to launch a quick poll and just let me know between the manual snipping and maybe that version compare. Is this something that you see a time savings with? How are you compare maybe how you are currently doing it to the way DataSnipper might be able to save you some time? I think particularly some documents that we might receive from clients can be hundreds and hundreds of pages. And I think DataSnipper, by identifying the changes with version compare, or even using that search function, you're able to get to those changes really quickly. And that just, I think, is a better avenue to go down than not being sure if you got a complete and accurate picture of the changes year over year. All right. Thank you guys for the participation. Love to see it. Mostly, I'd say the average is between 2 and 3 hours. So that's great. I mean, I think that across multiple engagements, that time savings adds up pretty quick. So I hope that if you do use this in the field, you do find those time savings there for you. All right, let's get back into our demo. I'm gonna close this Excel file. Feel free to save it if you'd like, but we are actually gonna move on into the second use case we have today, which is contribution testing. I'm going to give you guys a moment to get to this point, and then we will jump right in. Okay. Cool. So now what we're going to do is get into contribution testing. I'm just reading through the chat here. Justin, let me know if you want me to pause and get through any of these.
I'm currently working through them. Apologies, everybody. There are quite a few backlogs, so I will get to your question.
And we can always come back to them at the end, Justin, if we need to.
Yeah. At the moment, everything does seem to be all right. There's a lot of questions around version comparison. So just a kind of blanket comment on that one. It is an additional paid feature. So if you would like that included, you can either reach out to us on DataSnipper side, but it's probably better if you can identify who is your representative within your firm, and then they can engage directly with DataSnipper to see if that is something that you would like included in your license. There were also quite a few questions around the document organizer. So if you don't see the document organizer, maybe Rachel, you can quickly just highlight that one there. If you don't see the document organizer on your side, that is because you're on a slightly older version of DataSnipper. Again, that is not an additional paid feature, that's just a different version. So if you do want to make sure that you do have that, again, reaching out to your DataSnipper representative internally so that they can discuss with us to make sure that you are on that latest version. That seems to be coming through quite a lot. Gotcha. For everyone else, I will get to your questions, I promise.
Yeah, maybe that's a good point, just to level set on the version that you're on. If you do go to that the learn button on the DataSnipper ribbon, you can scroll down to the about button and you can see which version you're on. So if you're on something before version 5, you might not see that document organizer. And you can also see which features you have in your license. You could see that I have access to version compare and FSS. If you do not, that's, as Justin had mentioned, make sure that you reach out to somebody internally and you can connect with us and we can help you guys discuss it. Okay, so moving along, let's get into some contribution testing. So again, from my conversations that I've had with EBP auditors, I found that contribution testing tends to be where the most significant time is spent, and also where a lot of the errors or issues are identified. So what we're going to do today is a quick example, a very basic example also of maybe a way to trace through some different contribution testing data elements. And we're going to use some of our automated features. So those are going to be these ones here, document matching And if you're on a newer version like me, you'll have two options here between invoice and form, but we're going to leverage form extraction first. Before we get into that, I do want to go back to that organize button. If you have it, you'll notice the different files that we have. If I'm realizing now, if you don't have document organizer, there is another way to see it. And what you could do is by accessing the viewer, we're going to bring that document viewer back up, and you could see the folders that were already made. So the salary forms, the salary deferral forms, these are handwritten documents, which shout out to my sales team for helping me write these out. But the purpose is that in this example, your client's employees have elected a certain contribution election as part of their payroll, as part of their onboarding that HR holds. And so we have about 10 forms for the 10 employees that we've identified. If we go into the participant detail summary, this is a record keeper, dummy version that we've created internally to represent maybe the contribution held by the custodian. And then last, we have a payroll register, which also we've created internally that just kind of shows you those different accumulations to date. This is year-to-date activity for some of our employees. So that's just a level set of the different documents we have. Now let's talk through the testing procedures, and then we can get to snipping. So what we're going to do first is we're going to verify that eligible employees or employees are eligible and are available to participate in the plan per that adoption agreement that we just looked at. Then we're going to trace those employees through the custodian statement, and we're going to use a manual extraction tool to extract those pre-tax contributions. So really, something I was thinking about as we were making these materials is that it seems to be a lot of, because this is a big time sink, or this takes a lot of time for staff and seniors and managers even to review, using the manual snipping tools and some of the features and functionalities you'll see, there really is, there's less risk that you're going to fat finger something or that you're going to get something wrong from the extraction. And so leveraging the audit trail that we're creating, I think that this makes a work paper like this that might be a little overwhelming to some people, really easy to follow along for the audit procedure. So first, let's do this first testing procedure here, and I'm going to open up this first grouping and also the second one so you can see what we're going to be doing. So from the salary deferral agreement, we're going to be extracting this information, and then you could see in columns J, K, L, and M, I have formulas already embedded in here to look at those two eligibility requirements. So as we just looked at in that adoption agreement, are the employees over 21 years old, and have they served at the company for more than a year? So you might get this information from your client, but in the case you don't, I'm going to show you how you can leverage form extraction. So I'm going to open up the grouping on row 12, so you can follow along with the different DataSnipper procedures we're going to be performing today. First, let's go into form extraction. And what this is going to do, it's going to open up a new window as it just did on my screen, and we're going to click into Start New Form Extraction. What you can do here, we don't have the folder structure here, but what I would do is you could search depending on the naming conventions of these files, use that search function and select all. With form extraction, kind of like the name implies, we're going to be extracting from a form. And I say form in the way that this is a standard form that doesn't change too much. There can be some variability, you'll see. But for the most part, we're going to be creating like a stamp almost for these extraction amounts that we want repeated across documents. So once you've selected all of those salary deferral forms, you can click OK. And now we see one of the documents. I've scrolled out there with my mouse, and you can see that we have all 10 documents here. You're welcome to scroll through them for these participants that we have. And you can see that for the most part, the form is the same. I did take these on my phone to send them to my computer because who has a scanner anymore? But this is really to show you that whether you are extracting from a digital PDF or a scanned in photocopy document, DataSnipper can really help you, regardless of the type of support you receive. So the two things you need to tell DataSnipper to use form extraction is how you want it repeated. So because we have imported all 10 separate documents, let's set extraction per document, and then we're going to pull out certain data elements. So what we're going to do is set this first extraction over the name. So as I set that, you could see that DataSnipper creates a preview of that extraction over this amount. I'm also going to do that with employee ID. Let's also do date of hire. We want date of birth. I would like also the 401k election contribution. And then one more down, let's get this effective date for payroll. So I know I went through that pretty quick. If you're still snipping, no worries. I do want to show you what the preview looks like on this side and give you a little insight on, if yours doesn't look like mine, how you can get it that way. So if we go to this first one, our good friend Charlie Brown, you can see that as I click into each of the boxes, DataSnipper is showing where that extraction box is being stamped on all of these forms. I could scroll down and see that all of these are appropriately being pulled. You know, this is a big box, so you might need to make the parameter box a little bit bigger depending on the name. If for some reason your extraction is not coming out like mine, you might need to set the key. What we're going to do is click on, you can right click, or no, let's go to edit key for extraction 1. Here we go. We placed it on Casey Musgraves, that's why. Wherever you place that extraction, you can go to that box and you can see where there's a highlight, and that is the key associated with this extraction. So if you right click and click edit key, what this is going to do is we're going to actually change the key or the anchor that DataSnipper has hooked onto and is reading and then placing the extraction across all the documents. As I let go, you can see there's not really much change, but now key, which is going to be a unique identifier. So every time DataSnipper in this form extraction sees employee personal information, it's going to set this extraction box you see across all of the documents. So you have a little variability, as you can see, like I think this one, like the scan is a little bit different between these two. But you could see that DataSnipper is still reading that amount and very accurate with its extraction. Looks like all of those employee IDs came out correctly. If we look at the dates, those look good as well. I do like to point out on something like this, where you see per pay period on both of these, you do need a unique identifier. So for extraction number 5, you could see that when I hover over it, form is actually the key up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit the key, and I want to include that percent sign, and then also use that percent per pay. So if that's set correctly, you could see we did have a hole there, and it was able to be extracted appropriately. If we wanted to extract this amount, that's $90, for example, the dollar value of contribution, DataSnipper would be confused essentially with the per pay period, because every time it sees that key, it's going to perform that extraction. So something to note as you are getting familiar with form extraction, the identification of keys is really important. What you can also do here is before we export to Excel, you can save this as a template. So if you expect to do this testing each year for this client and you know this is the support you're going to get, you can save this as a template, and then we can call this salary deferral for client X, we'll call it. And I can save this, click OK, and then if you go back into form extraction, you'll see that the template has been created here. So this is something, again, if you want to standardize the testing around this, or if you spend a lot of time inputting things or manually, you can use the templating feature to apply across all those documents. To do that again, you see that we've made this template, and I'm actually going to re-import these and export this to Excel. Now we have a new tab here called Form Extraction. And as I click into each of these, you could see DataSnipper has extracted those amounts and keeps that cross-referencing alive for us here. What I'm going to do now is copy and paste, or you can cut paste this information into our testing template. So I'm going to Control C, right into our testing template. So you can see that with just a couple clicks and a matter of seconds, we've imported all this information, extracted from, or keeping the source document intact, and also looking at our first two procedures quite quickly because we were able to set up this template appropriately. So you can see here that it looks like we had 2 employees at the start of the year, the planned start date, that were not eligible. So depending on how you do your testing, you can use this documentation as you'd like, or you can use the additional snipping features as you'd like. So maybe if we go to Princess Peach, for example, we can use this exception snip to show that her date of hire has not been a full year before that plan starts. You can click into this and change it with change it to an exception snip if you'd like. You can see that took us to the form extraction where that form extraction lives. But we can also do it. We can add an additional snip of date of hire over this amount, or maybe I'd like to do it over the not eligible here to show that that amount is proven to be not eligible for that particular employee. So now that we've kind of created our database of information, or we've gotten all that that HR salary deferral information, now we're going to move into procedure 2. So just because I know the size of the Excel file can get a little hairy, I am going to close those 2 groupings, and I'm going to close our first procedure and move on to row 15. So now you can see we're going to leverage some of this information that we've just extracted into our document matching. And so this is procedure 2 here, where we're going to trace for the eligible employees to the custodian statement and extract the amount that the custodian has for their record. So if you open up grouping on Q, you'll see that we have document matching here, and these are actually where our outputs are going to be. So we're going to use the inputs, which is columns employee name and employee ID, to kind of create a lookup to the participation detail. And this is where we want our extractions to be. That is maybe a lot more said than, or easier said than done. So let's get into it. So if you go into document matching, it's going to be similar to form extraction in the fact that it's extracting something. But with document matching, the source the file does not need to be the same. So, or the source file that you're wanting these extractions from doesn't need to be in that same standard format. So with document matching, DataSnipper is going to read through the whole document. It's not going to leverage the keys per se. It's going to be leveraging the inputs that we've created here. So before I jump into that, I also want to mention that you can create templates with document matching. This is a feature. I think it's in version 4.1, maybe 4.1.5. So if you don't have the company templates specific to document matching, that's why your screen might look a little bit different than mine. But you will still be able to follow along with this procedure that we're or what we're about to do for procedure 2. So if you click into Start New Document Match, there are 3 steps we need to tell DataSnipper to help us create these matches. First, we're going to select the sample data. And so what that means is that we are going to select employee name and employee ID from our input. So what we've extracted from the salary deferral agreement, we're going to ask DataSnipper to read through the contribution detail, or sorry, custodian detail, and find these amounts on that document. You are able to, if I'm holding down Control, and you can see that I'm selecting certain columns. It doesn't all have to be in one like table structure as this, but you do want to make sure that the lines are consistent for each record. I also always suggest keeping the headers in here. You'll see why in step 3. It just, kind of keeps it organized and keeps my brain sane. Next, we'll click next. And now what we're going to do is is use those document folders. So in the first example we had today of that plan overview, it was just the best practice, right, to keep things organized within our Excel. But with document matching, when you're going to be matching to more than one type of document, you do want to leverage these folders. So I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but we also have a payroll register that we're going to be extracting from. And so we're essentially going to create a 3-way match. And you can do that all here within the one document match we're about to set up. So what we can do is I'd like for you to select the custodian detail, and that's what's this participation in green. It's going to be coming from, it's the source for these file or columns here. And then next is that payroll register. So that's going to be, we're going to be extracting for these 2 columns here. Once you get to this point, you're going to click next. And now is where where the headers kind of come into play. And we're going to tell DataSnipper where we want those extractions to be placed. So for the employee name, so everything in column D here, whoops, let me go back to that. For everything in D here, we want DataSnipper to find the employee name on the custodian detail and put that into column O. You can see that as I hover around, DataSnipper is is showing me where those extractions are going to be placed. So we're going to put the employee name in O and the employee ID in P. If we do open up that one last grouping here, we're also going to have the employee name matched to the payroll register. And so we want that in column R. I wouldn't expect the employee ID to be on the payroll register. We're going to scroll up to put no output here. Something to note is that whatever you put in your inputs needs to be extracted from one of the outputs. And so what I mean by that is we can't have both of these be no output. You'll see you'll get an error message. For each input, you need to identify an output. Let me put that one in the right spot again. All right. So now that we have set this up to perform our extractions, I'm going to click match all rows. Again, you could save this as a template and reuse for other clients, another audit year that you're actually performing for this client. You can save that here. But for us, let's go ahead and click match all rows, and you'll see what DataSnipper can extract for us. So hopefully your Excel looks like mine. And you can see that as we click into each of these, DataSnipper has identified the correct employee name and the participation ID, or that employee ID that the custodian has for us. So what I think would be helpful is, because we don't have that pre-tax contribution amount, or we are validating it, what we can do is by going to the Charlie Brown record, and we know it's him because his employee ID is matched with it, we can zoom in and manually extract the contribution amount. So using the text snip, I'm going to extract the employee pre-tax amount right into my Excel file. So I can do the same kind of by using it as an index, using the document matching to create an index for me, so that I can then create that extraction there. I'm going to go through each of these, and I'm going to get that contribution amount extracted for each of the employees. So one thing I do like to note here is we could have also put the date of birth and date of hire into our input data and had that extracted as well. Really, as long as you know that that extraction is can be done on the file that you are using document matching for, I would say the more inputs, the better. The better hit you're going to get, the more accurate hit you're going to get down the line. Okay, now from the participation detail, you can see that we have extracted that contribution amount, and then and that was leveraging the document matching. So we document matched these 2 columns, and then we manually snip this one. We can do the same on this payroll register. So on employee name in column R, you can see that as I click through, it's the same idea. DataSnipper has identified the name. You can see that it is even kind of flipped within the payroll report. So last name, first name, DataSnipper was still able to find the correct name, create that match, and perform that extraction. So what we might want to do here now is we're going to extract the year-to-date gross wages and then any exclusions that might be particular to your plan. So what I'd like to do is show you that using TextSnip, you can draw that snip over the amount and see it extracted here. Or you can use, or additionally, you can use the SumSnip tool. So you can see the two exclusions that I have are bonus and fringe benefits. And so if I drag a yellow square over those two amounts, you'll see that DataSnipper actually extracted them and summed them together as done in our formula bar. You can see then my formula as part of the Excel is in place. And if I keep going through, I can see that I don't necessarily need a receivable here because DataSnipper is, or the way that I set up the formula, excuse me, is that we're taking that per pay period election that the employee elected as part when they were first hired, multiplied by the eligible compensation for the plan. And you can see that that's actually being checked versus that pre-tax contribution amount we got from the participation detail. So again, this is just one very simple example of one way to complete this procedure. I'm going to keep going through just to show you one more thing that we have, or a couple more features. I know that we have about 10 minutes left. So let's go to, I think, Greg, GG. What we're going to do is let's extract those wages. But again, instead of using the TextSnip tool or the SumSnip, you can see that DataSnipper is highlighting or underlining each of the values. And so I can right click on that and create that snip. It's highlighted in yellow because obviously I had the SumSnip tool highlighted. So it can go one of both ways. It's still extracting that information, but there's just nothing to sum. So it's essentially becoming like the TextSnip tool. So I do want to save some time at the end. You're welcome to go through the rest of these, or we did provide a solution for you that is fully complete. One last feature that I do want to show, and I don't think I actually popped this out. This is for procedure number 3. But one really cool feature that I like to leverage, and I think I mentioned in the training if you've ever taken one with me, is this screenshot. So you could see, I know that it is usual, or at least it's happened to me when I was an auditor in the field, that the client would share screens with me and just, maybe for a walkthrough, I would document how that, how the procedure flew, or there's sometimes they don't want to send us things, which has been my case. And so here at DataSnipper, we do have a really cool feature to import something like that. If you do have a screenshot from your client, is this from clipboard function. So I have this snipping tool saved on my desktop. You can also use Windows Shift S to do a screen grab, or however you'd like to do it. But I thought it'd be a cool feature to show you guys today, in that when I get my snipping tool, you'll see it kind of darkens my screen. And I have now created a screen grab, and now that lives in my clipboard. What I can do now is go to import from clipboard, and DataSnipper will bring that screenshot right into the document viewer and ask to run OCR. So what we're doing is now DataSnipper is kind of reading through that text layer. You can see that table snip has identified a table. And this is, again, a very simple example of a receivable ledger that might be from the employee or from the client. And so if I want to search by employee name, I can click into this employee's name to see if they do have maybe a receivable due to timing differences. And I can search for that amount using that search function. I clicked on the magnifying glass, and I can see that they're on the screenshot. DataSnipper has identified that employee name. And so using the TextSnip, I can put my cursor in that receivable amount and snip directly from that screen. And you can see that that takes away the check. And so I know that I have tied out or recalculated that amount appropriately. 3195. I think that that is also very close, 10 or 3150. There we go. Okay. So that is just an extra little feature. Just wanted to recap here. We showed document matching, form extraction, and those manual snipping tools. I'm going to flip back to our slides really quick and just see what you're thinking about those features. Which ones are you most excited to use that I just demonstrated for you in that use case? Maybe the one that you think will be the most applicable to your EBP audits, or the one that just looks the coolest. Just wanting to see kind of from the audience what we're feeling there. It is a tight race between document matching and form extraction. I'm glad to see some for manual snipping too. I think that's a really useful feature. Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you guys for your participation there. It really is neck and neck with document matching and form extraction, 45 and 46%. I agree. I think that when I was creating these use cases, you know, you can use them interchangeably, just depending on the source documents that your client might have or might provide to you within your Excels or within your your audit. And I would also say that between these two features, the templating feature is also very cool. So just to go back to this, you could see that you're able to save a template here. This is going to be ones that you create on your own machine. Company templates are going to be ones that everyone on your license has. So if you're interested in that, a DataSnipper Innovation Services Manager can help you with that. And then we also have some feature templates. So would suggest that you take a look through these to see which ones might be able to be applicable to your engagement. So that really sums up our webinar today. Let me jump back into those slides real quick. And I see that we do have some questions in the Q&A. Justin, do you think we should answer any of those, or should we maybe come back to them after we wrap up the next steps?
How's it, everybody? I'm working through them. It might be nice, Rachel, for you to quickly just talk about redacting text. That has come up a few times.
Oh, sure.
As well as holding down control to snip more than one item. That is starting to come in a few times.
Awesome. Okay, let me open up. Maybe I'll go into the solution we have here in the contribution testing. So yeah, those are really great questions that we have or that we've got. Redact text, I think particularly with PPI or data that needs to be protected, we do have a redact function. So if you go to DataSnipper, under the remove button, you'll see that you are able to redact text here. And so I would be able to, let's say this employee ID, we didn't want to share that, let's say. So I've set that box there. And then whenever I export the document from this file, that box will be immovable. So that, I can obviously move it until I do solidify that going forward, or be shared, excuse me. The other question about kind of summing up in a cell or kind of concatenating is the way I see it. If you go into text, this also works for some snip, but text, what you can do is let's place a snip, maybe for this first sentence. And if you hold down Control, you're going to see that I'm able to add to this cell. So what this is going to do is it's just going to continue linking to this one cell, so D35. I'm going to link all of these extractions. You can see in my formula bar here, DataSnipper puts a marker or like a line in between different extractions to show a break in those snips, but it's all linked to this one cell. I think that if you want to highlight certain paragraphs from the adoption agreement, for example, and have it all in one cell, you're able to do that here. And one kind of thing overall is anything you do extract is then malleable in a way, in that you can apply any formatting to it. So if I wanted to wrap the text, if I wanted to merge the cell and to be more, those cross-references stay intact throughout the document. Awesome. Well, I know we're just about at time here. Let me jump back into the slides. We will cover the rest of the Q&A for you guys. So if you we will type out those answers for you. But I did just want to cover that this is a webinar series, and the one you attended here is the May 25th one. So thank you guys for attending. We're going to be following up this particular series June 13th. And you can actually register for that now. If you go to our events and webinars page on our website, I can show you that. But we're going to continue this series throughout the summer, just so that we are making sure that we're getting everyone into one of these webinar sessions, and hopefully you guys are seeing the use of that. But you can mix and match. They're going to be consistent throughout. And as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a tips and tricks at the end of the summer. If you go to our events and webinars page, you're able to pre-register and check out some of the other ones that we have coming up. You can see that at the bottom here are all those EBP ones through the end of August. So feel free to register for that.